Hey, welcome in, everybody. Let's check out today's creator on FG Unstacked.
Hey, welcome in, FG here. So this week's creator that we're going to be taking a look at is food related, not eating this time, but creating. I actually really enjoy cooking, and my wife really enjoys me cooking, gives her a break, and um, she enjoys a lot of the dishes I've made. And I have to give credit to the creator that we're going to be taking a look at today, because some of the best recipes that we've got in our repertoire have actually started from his site. If I've tweaked them or something, but they've started with him. So let's put his site up on stage here. And we are looking at Chef John with Food Wishes. Now, if you enjoy cooking, this is going to be a chef that you really will enjoy taking a look at his site. He will do a video, and he gives you rough measurements with it while in the video. But you can always go, he all of his recipes are also on allrecipes.com. So you can always find his recipes there. And he has been doing this. You can see he's got 4.6 million subscribers. He's got over 2,400 videos. If we take a look at his videos here and look at the oldest, you can see his oldest videos are almost 20 years old, 19 years ago for where he started. And he's been a professional chef. He did this YouTube channel on the side as kind of his pet project while he was a head chef. And eventually he went to doing this, I think, full time, kind of retired from being a actual chef in the restaurant business, and basically became an online chef. He, in the past, has uploaded videos about twice a week, although recently, in the last few months, he's changed it to where he's only doing one video per week instead of two videos per week. But I have to tell you, if you enjoy cooking, if you're looking for a recipe, you are very likely to find what you're looking for, or at least some version of it, here on his site. And he covers a wide range of cuisines. Let's click into videos here, and we'll actually go to latest, and we can kind of look back. So you can see like chicken parm, candied salmon dip, cowboy bacon. So there's just a wide range of side dishes with potatoes, desserts, confections, main dishes, appetizers, just all kinds of stuff. Cowboy butter steak toast. Ooh, that sounds good. Hawaiian style beef stew. That's another one that sounded really good to me. But like I said, if you can think of it, you search his site, he'll probably have a recipe for you. And I find his delivery is really great, in terms of, he's got a very melodic voice, and he's a hands channel. He always wants the focus to be on the food. So his camera remains focused on the food, and you're seeing exactly how he's preparing it. You're seeing the stages of the cooking. So, in a lot of cooking shows, you're seeing the host there, and they're doing some stuff, and then they'll swap it out, and You don't get that same type of stuff with Chef John. And he's got a fun sense of humor, and every video that he does will always contain kind of a trademark little what would you call it? I don't want to say a jingle, but he makes a rhyme in there. And so everyone that you watch, you'll be listening for that. But let's take a look at one of his videos. And I'm going to bring up one of his videos that is one of my family's favorite recipes that we use. And I'll tell you how we tweaked it and do it ourselves now. So let's bring that up.
Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Thai-dipped beef tri-tip. That's right, we really should have called this satay-soaked beef tri-tip. But unfortunately, that didn't rhyme. But anyway, I've always wanted
to stop real quick here. So what we did, we tried it this way a couple times. Everybody really loved the flavor, and we actually wanted more of the flavoring on it. So what we started doing was taking our tri-tip, cubing it up for kebabs, and then marinating it in this marinade and cooking them as kebabs. And I'll tell you, this is a favorite. Everybody, we make a little bit of jasmine rice to eat it on top of, with some quick pickled cucumbers and onions, and everybody loves this one.
to try this little twist on one of my favorite all-time Asian marinades. Plus, since we're heading right into the middle of grilling season, it's never a bad idea to remind people how great and user-friendly the tri-tip roast is. And we'll be getting to the beef briefly, but first we have to put together our marinade, which we'll do quite simply by adding the following ingredients to a mixing bowl. And we'll start with a whole bunch of minced garlic, followed by some bruised and chopped up lemongrass, which, by the way, I'm going to give you a few tips about on the blog post. We're also going to add a ton of finely grated ginger root, as well as, if you don't mind shedding a few tears, some grated onion. And that's going to do it for our aromatic vegetable base, which means we can continue on with a whole bunch of fish sauce, which a lot of people are afraid of because they don't understand what it is. Okay, once you learn this is nothing more than the liquid that comes off decomposing fish, you realize there's nothing to fear. And then we're also going to go ahead and add a little bit of soy sauce, as well as some seasoned rice vinegar, which is rice vinegar they make with a little bit of salt and sugar in it. And then, of course, we're going to want to spice this up, which I'm going to do with some ground coriander, some ground cumin, as well as some gorgeously colored turmeric. And that is going to be it for the spices. Just kidding. Of course, we're going to put a little cayenne. And then to finish this up.
So that little bit of cayenne, that's one of his trademarks. Unless it's a dessert or a sweet dish, almost every savory dish, he'll add just a little bit of cayenne to it.
We'll go ahead and dump in some brown sugar, which we're going to want in here to balance out all these intense flavors. And then last but not least, a little bit of vegetable oil, for reasons I'd rather not discuss. Just put it in. And then we'll go ahead and take a whisk and give this a mix. And that's it. Our Thai-inspired beef satay-ish marinade is done. And normally that would now be ready to toss in hundreds of little pieces of beef that we would marinate and then skewer before grilling. But I've always wanted to try this as a marinade for a large hunk of meat to put on the grill, in particular a beef tri-tip roast. And there it is, apparently named for its triangular shape, which I believe is cut from the bottom sirloin. And not only is this a relatively affordable piece of meat, but it's also very user-friendly and doesn't require much trimming, as well as there's really no bones or connective tissue, so we pretty much get to eat all of it. And what we'll do is transfer that into our marinade so we can give it the old poke and soak.
The old
so let's
poke and
toss
soak.
that in, and then take a fork and poke it all over. Like, I don't know, 60 to 75 times. And no, don't count. We'll just do that until we think it's good. We are, after all, the Tribe Called Quest of how many pokes is best.
And there you go. There's his trademark. The Tribe Called Quest of how many pokes is best.
I was actually trying to work in a Q-tip reference, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. But anyway, once our beef has been coated thoroughly and poked severely, what we'll do is cover that and let it marinate in the fridge for anywhere between 2 and 12 hours. And whenever I marinate in a bowl like this, it's not a bad idea to pull it out once in a while and give it a toss, as well as some additional poking. So I did that a few times. And in case you're keeping score at home, I let mine marinate for exactly 4 hours. At which point we're going to pull it out of the marinade, and I like to set it down on some paper towels to drain just a little bit. And it probably doesn't matter at all, but I do like to brush off a few of the chunks. And then assuming that our coals are ready, we can head outside and get to roasting. And yes, I did say roasting, not grilling. I'm actually going to cook mine over indirect, fairly low heat. All right, my cooking temperature ranged between 300 and 325 for most of the cooking. And I'm going to give you some different options on the blog for ways to cook this. But for a little change of pace, I decided to go low and slow. And other than brushing on some of the marinade and maybe turning it once in a while, I didn't really do anything except wait for it to get to an internal temp of 130 to 135, which for me is the ideal temperature to cook this to. All right, we don't want to cook this too rare because like things like flank steak and skirt steak, it can be kind of chewy if we undercook it. So I did check with a thermometer and pulled mine off at about 132 and headed inside to let it rest. Oh, and quick tip, if you have some extra marinade, which you probably will, what we can do is bring that to a boil to sterilize it. And then that's safe to brush on our meat or serve on the side or whatever. So I did brush on a little more. Not that it really needed it, but I did want to show you have to boil it if you're going to use it. But anyway, as usual, we're going to let that meat rest at least 10 to 15 minutes. Truth be told, I got a phone call, so I actually let mine rest about a half hour. But it was still beautiful, as you're about to see as I cut in here. And my first cut did go right into the center, because I wanted to see how moist and amazingly beautiful this was. But then I remembered I always like to take a few slices off the edge. And if the driest, most cooked parts are still moist and delicious, then I know the rest of it's going to be awesome. And as I was cutting, I could not believe how tender this felt. I also couldn't believe I wasn't cutting across a grain. I blame the amazing smell and appearance, as well as my debilitating hunger. But you know what? Even though it wasn't from the middle, and I sort of cut it with the grain, it was still absolutely incredible. Tender, flavorful, moist, and many, many other adjectives. It was basically a perfect piece of sliced roast beef that tastes like beef satay. So I went ahead and sliced up some more, the right way, against the grain, which, by the way, is pretty easy to see on a tri-tip. And while this meat was quite delicious on its own, when I added my favorite satay condiments, which would be some peanut sauce and a spicy cucumber salad, it became even more fantastic. So I decided to plate some up and eat some more. And by the way, you wouldn't know by watching this video, but some people shy away from tri-tip because it has a reputation for being kind of tough and chewy. But I'm telling you, using this technique, it was not at all. And I'm really not sure how much of that is the marinade ingredients and how much of it was that low, slow cooking. But I really was absolutely thrilled with how this came out. But anyway, that's it. What I'm calling Thai-dipped beef tri-tip. If you're a fan of beef satay, but not necessarily a fan of skewering hundreds of little pieces of beef, then I really do hope you give this delicious alternative a try soon. So head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.
All right, and there we go. So they aren't very long videos. Most of his videos are in, well, you can see like right here. Here's 5 minutes to 10 minutes. And that is about what he gets on there. So you kind of saw he gives kind of visual for the measurements, but then he used to have his site on foodwishes.com. You may still be able to get it there, but I know that all of the recipes are over on allrecipes.com. But you know, we took his tri-tip thing back to the lots of little pieces doing the skewers for the kebabs, and I got to say that his recipe for the marinade, it is really good. In fact, my mouth is watering here just watching the video again. But you kind of heard his delivery, the kind of one-liner joke in there. Let's look at one more here real quick. This is another recipe that's one of my wife's favorites.
Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with shakshuka. That's right, we're doing breakfast for dinner. Although technically this was originally a dinner that became a breakfast. So I guess we're really doing dinner for breakfast for dinner. But regardless of when you serve this North African dish, it's always comforting and delicious and never not fun to say. In fact, sometimes when I'm not even making this, I'll just yell for no apparent reason, shakshuka. And now that you know about this, I'm assuming you'll probably do the same. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. And what we'll do is we'll place a heavy skillet over medium-high heat and drizzle in a little bit of olive oil. And as usual, by a little bit, I mean a lot. And then to that, we're going to add 2 ingredients, some diced onions, which is very traditional, as well as some mushrooms, which are definitely not traditional. And we do also want to add some salt at this point. And while the mushrooms are not a classic addition, I really think they're amazing in this. And for me, just make the dish more savory. And what we want to do here is cook these onions and mushrooms, like I said, over medium-high heat, for I'm going to guess and say about 10 minutes or so, until they give up any and all excess liquid and start to turn golden. And as they start to take on a little bit of color, that flavor is going to get meatier and, in my opinion, way more delicious. So like I said, we're going to take our time and we're going to cook them until they look something like this. So those are looking pretty good right there. And at this point, we can introduce another key ingredient, our peppers. And we're going to use 3 kinds, even though it only looks like 2. I have some diced sweet red bell pepper, as well as a red Jimmy Nardello pepper, which is also mild. And then, as you can probably see, 1 sliced jalapeno. And we will stir that in and we'll cook that for about 5 minutes until those peppers start to soften up a little bit. And then once that's happened, before we add our tomato product, what we want to do is add our spices and cook those for a couple minutes in this mixture. So at this point, I'm going to add a spoon of cumin, as well as some paprika. And by the way, any kind of ground chili pepper would work here. We're also going to do a little touch of turmeric, which by all reports is super good for you, and you should try to eat a lot of. We're also going to add some cayenne, of course. You knew that was coming. And then last but not least, a little bit of freshly ground black pepper. And we'll stir in those spices. And we'll let those cook for a minute or 2 in this mixture to, as I like to say, wake up the flavors, which really has to do with the flavor of those spices sort of infusing into the oil, as opposed to adding them after the tomatoes go in when everything's kind of wet. And does it really make that big of a difference? Who knows, but why take any chances? So like I said, we'll cook.
So you can see that the camera is always focused on the food. You're really seeing the cooking process. Even though he does time lapse there on it, you're able to really kind of see what it should look like when you're at the stages where you're doing additional things.
Cook those spices for a minute or 2, at which point we can finally add our crushed tomatoes. And of course, unless you're using fresh tomatoes, you're going to want to use those San Marzano tomatoes. And sure, I guess you could use a lower quality if you wanted. That's up to you. But remember, you're in charge of making sure your shakshuka is off the hookah. So suit yourself, but I'm going to go with the San Marzanos. And then because I do want to simmer this mixture for about 15 or 20 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and stir in a nice splash of water so things don't thicken up and reduce too quickly. And I would say about medium heat's probably the best. But you can adjust that up or down a little bit depending on what you're seeing in the pan. But I do want to let this simmer about like that, stirring occasionally, for like I said, about 15 or 20 minutes, to really give those veggies time to soften up and sweeten up, and just generally give all those flavors time to meld together. Okay? So I let mine simmer, stirring occasionally, and approximately 15 to 20 minutes later, it looked like this. And by the way, even though we added some salt at the beginning, you definitely want to taste this for seasoning before we add our eggs on top. So make sure you check this, especially for salt. And then once we've determined this mixture is cooked long enough, what we'll do is we'll prepare the surface for our eggs. And what I mean by that is we're going to take a spoon and make sort of a depression in that sauce, 1 for each egg we're going to place down, which in my case is going to be 5. So I'm going to make 5 little wells into which we're going to carefully place our eggs. And to do that successfully, here is a huge and very important tip. Do not crack the egg directly into your sauce. Crack it into a ramekin first, because you're going to be able to see it before it goes in here. Okay, so very important. Crack it into a ramekin first. That way there's no possible way the yolk can break. Whoops. Looks like that one broke anyway. So let me rephrase that. By using a ramekin, you can lessen your chances of a broken yolk. But it still could happen. And yeah, I probably should have stopped the camera and fished that one out and had them all come out perfectly, but I didn't. And no, it has nothing to do with ethics or keeping it real. It has much more to do with laziness. Plus, as you'll see, it's really not that big of a problem. So I really wasn't that upset, allegedly. And then once our eggs are down, we will give each one a little bit of seasoning with some salt and freshly ground black pepper. And then all we need to complete this dish is to keep simmering this on about medium heat, I'd say, until our eggs are cooked to our liking, which can be, for someone like me, very, very soft, to others who like it cooked all the way through like a hard-boiled egg. And while some people like to pop this in the oven to finish the eggs, I prefer to just do it right on top of the stove with a cover except I don't have a cover that fits this pan. So in that case, I just use a sheet pan, which totally works fine. And this is not going to happen super quick, but you definitely don't want to go anywhere. You got to pay attention. So we'll keep that covered, and then every once in a while, we'll give our shakshuka a little looka. And right here was kind of getting close. And one thing to keep in mind here, if you want your eggs soft like I always do, you're definitely going to want to err on the side of taking this off a little too early, because that mixture is super hot. And by the time you plate this up and find some toasted bread, that egg is going to continue to cook. So I gave it a few more minutes. And then right here, even though it was still underdone, I could tell I was only a couple minutes away. So I proceeded on to the final touches, which really you could do at any time, but I tend to do it at the end here. So I'm going to finish this by crumbling over some feta cheese. To be honest, I usually prefer goat cheese, but this time I did go with feta cheese, which is very wonderful. And then besides the cheese, I'm also going to give it a little drizzle of extra virgin olive oil. It's going to add just a little bit more richness and flavor, and also freak out my guests because it looks like raw egg yolk. And then last but not least, a little bit of fresh herb. I'm going to go with Italian parsley, although I believe cilantro is probably more traditional. And that's it. As soon as you think your eggs are perfect, your shakshuka is done. So let's go ahead and serve this up while it's still nice and hot. So I usually recommend putting some sauce down in the bowl first, and then topping it with an egg, and then possibly more sauce. Then, of course, we'll finish that with the mandatory slice of toast. I mean, otherwise, what are you going to sop up all that goodness with? You got to have some toast. And then my final touch was a few more drops of olive oil. And yes, that was mostly for the pictures. And once I'd taken a few of those, it was time to dig right in. And you'll notice that even though those eggs were pretty soft when we pulled it off the stove, because that mixture underneath is so hot, by the time you serve this up, it should be perfect. And as I mentioned, I do like my yolk a little runny, so this was just perfect for me. Other people like to cook this all the way through, which is fine. Who am I to judge your eggs? But this is exactly how I like mine, and that is just extraordinarily delicious. That beautifully aromatic, spicy sauce, just an amazing thing to poach those eggs in. And while admittedly not maybe the most beautiful thing to watch someone eat, this is just so delicious, so hearty, so satisfying, so comforting. It's just no surprise at all it became such a popular dish in that part of the world. Just a fantastic thing to eat, whether it's for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. In fact, there's an old Tunisian saying that basically roughly translates to any time is shakshuka time. And I could not agree more. So I really do hope you give this a try. Head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.
All right. And he's right. It's delicious. And as I said, that's one of my wife's absolute favorites. She loves when we make that. But anyways, so there you can see, I hope that piques your interest in his stuff. Again, if you enjoy cooking even a little bit, he makes his recipes really easy to follow. Even stuff that you think might be difficult, he ends up making it look pretty easy, and he shows you the steps to make it that way. So, well, check out his channel. You can see he doesn't need my help for subscribers, but give his channel a watch and let me know below if you've watched him before. And if you go check out some recipes on his channel, come back, let me know. Well, that's it for today. As always, I want to thank you for your subscriptions and your watch time here with me. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. I look forward to your comments, and I'll catch you in the next one.
And as always, enjoy.